Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to another episode of Something Old, Something New, where we play old and new games of similar series or genres and pit them against each other head-to-head style. Today, we're tackling some of Nintendo's largest juggernauts in the form of Mario via the Mario All-Stars collections. Now, there's been many Mario All-Stars collections throughout the years, but right now we're talking the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, which just released for Switch, and we're pitting it against the Super Mario All-Stars and Mario World set for the Super Nintendo. Which one of these is going to come on top? Let's find out. Now, I want to take a second to explain why I chose the games I chose. As far as Super Mario 3D All-Stars, of course I want to go over this because it's new and it's brand new and it's cool as heck. Now, why did I choose this version of Super Mario All-Stars? Well, let me tell you. Original Super Mario All-Stars basically has everything this has except for it's lacking Super Mario World. So everyone knows these games are pretty heavy hitters, so I really wanted to make sure that the 2D scene had as much ammo as it could have to even try to compete. Another thing that may be asked is how come I did not compare this game. Now, this game is literally for the Wii. It's the 25th anniversary edition. It's the same exact thing as regular All-Stars. It's just the 4 games. The thing that was nice, though, is it came with this cool box, came with an art book, a bunch of history, a CD, and a whole bunch of crazy stuff that, quite frankly, this game should have came with. I'm not letting this, kind of get in the way of, of giving this game a fair shake. But in my opinion, back in the day, this game didn't come with anything because, that was not the norm back in the Super Nintendo time. In the Wii, though, I mean, you can really see that Nintendo went above and beyond and just gave you all sorts of stuff with this collection. The fact that they did not do that for this kind of is unfair. And so really we're comparing games here. We're not comparing what you get with it. We're comparing what is on this cartridge and what is on this cartridge. So that was my decision. I wanted to have the full spectrum of 3D versus the full spectrum of 2D, and that's what we're going with today. So anyway, let's jump into Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World. So you're greeted by possibly one of my favorite intro screens ever for a video game. It's kind of like all the characters are hanging out around the water cooler at work, and it's like, oh, game started, we need to get going now. Like, they're really good friends, but you're just kind of playing a game that they're acting in. Then you jump into the menu itself, really plain, really convenient though. I mean, you go through, it has all the games, Mario Lost Levels 2, Mario 3, and Super Mario World. Another huge thing for this collection is if you click a game, it actually has 4 save slots. And that's a really big deal because when these games were on NES, they didn't have backup batteries in them. So the fact that you can actually save while playing them was a godsend for many. But another neat thing that they show here is they actually do say, hey, the secret, the Lost Levels is unreleased in America. Up until now, the only way you could experience the original Mario trilogy was on the NES, basically with 8-bit graphics, 8-bit sound, everything you're used to seeing. But these games, however, were rebuilt from the ground up to be 16-bit graphics, 16-bit music. I mean, it just was a game changer. For many, it was like just the largest update you could possibly have, and it was totally unexpected at the time. In a way, because of the big upgrade, Miyamoto was kind of the first guy to ever say, hey, we can make an HD remake and definitely make a huge amount of money on it. And although Nintendo seemed to be the trendsetters, every other company obviously followed suit. So now on to the games you actually get with this collection. We're going to start off with Mario 1, a classic. If you haven't played it for whatever reason, this is the grandfather of all platformers. Basic power-ups, you get the mushroom, the fire flower. Basic stuff as far as, there was cheats and warps back then, which is a very cool thing, because, a lot of games didn't have secrets and Easter eggs back in the day. But one thing that really stands out with this game is the updated music. Now, when it comes to boss battles in this game, they're all pretty much the same, very weak. It's Bowser jumping up and down, shooting fireballs, but take a listen to this updated song. I'm sorry, but this thing is an absolute banger. Of course, once you beat him, you go to the end and the classic, oh, your princess is in another castle kind of goes through that motion, and you do this 8 times to beat the game. You know, historically, very important, still very fun, very tight platformer to this day, and a favorite among speedrunners. The next thing we're going to talk about is Mario the Lost Levels. Now, Mario the Lost Levels actually was just Mario 2 in Japan, but they thought it was much too hard for anyone else, so they kept it to themselves. Technically, this was the first time you ever got to play it. I'm not going to go too much into detail with this game, because it is exactly like Mario 1, just much harder. Basically, like, imagine like a really hard ROM hack, and that's what you got. There's a few subtle changes, poison mushrooms here and there, but on the whole, it's basically like Mario 1 Part 2. Then, of course, we go into Super Mario Bros. 2. Now, for those of you who don't know for whatever reason, the reason this game looks so different than a Mario game and plays so different than a Mario game is it's not a Mario game at all. It's actually a reskin of a game called Doki Doki Panic.
Whoa, what the hell?
What the? What is this? Huh. Okay, I get it. Everyone in the world knows that. Well, whatever. If you didn't, then to that one person, you're welcome, I guess. If you have never played this game, though, it's definitely kind of weird. You get to pick from 4 different characters. Mario, who's all around kind of not that special. Toad, who's a little bit quicker. Luigi, who can do this really high fluttery jump. And Peach, which is the only character you should play as, who can basically just hover through the levels. This game is entirely different, obviously, because it's not really a Mario game. But the cool thing is the bosses are, you know, at least different than before. With Mario 1, you basically just run past Bowser, hit the axe, or shoot him with fireballs, and you're done. In this one, you know, the main bosses you're going to be fighting is you're going to be fighting Birdo at the end of almost every stage, where you pick up her eggs, throw it at her face, it opens up the next door. Later in the game, there's other bosses, but it's the same kind of formula. Pretty much hit them 3 times and get it going. Nothing too complicated, but it still is enough to kind of keep you a little bit more challenged than normal. Then you have Mario 3, and that is when stuff started getting real. First huge update you'll see is there's a world map where you can actually go around and click the different levels and do all sorts of different things that are dependent on the world map. There's mushroom houses where you can get items for later on. There's mini games in the form of kind of like a roulette style game to get extra lives, or a card flipping game to get extra items. Also, you can unlock different paths by doing different things in levels, which really makes the overworld kind of like its own cool experience, something that Mario games did not have before. I will say once again though, this game kind of suffers from boring bosses. Just like the previous 2 titles, it's the same scenario: hit the enemy 3 times on the head and move on with your life. With the exception being the final boss, Bowser. That's a little different, but still is not that challenging. As you can see here, they go down very quick. They also have these mini fortress type castles, which aren't quite like the final bosses, but it's the same thing. You're fighting Boom Boom, jump on him 3 times, and you're done. The challenge was definitely in the platforming and the levels, and not so much in the bosses with all these early games. However, there is one. There is one enemy that will forever live in infamy to all Mario fans, especially those who played this game growing up, and that is the freaking sun. To those who grew up playing this game, the desert world was one of the best worlds with some of the most iconic levels you can remember. However, this sun was the bane of your existence. This thing was a beast, flying around, chasing you. Every time you think you have his arc figured out, he cuts his way up and kills you real fast. This thing is a nightmare. The sun is the most terrifying thing from this game, and I swear I still have PTSD from this guy. But when you want to talk about bang for your buck, you really get a lot of variety with this game. There's so many different worlds, and they're all amazing. I mean, they have an ice world, they have kind of this cloud world, they have the maze world, which is definitely not my favorite, probably not many people's favorite, big small world, which is great. And then, of course, when you get to the very end, you kind of go to like almost this kind of hell-looking place, and that is Bowser's world. Bowser's whole deal is basically these long lines of tanks and ships and airships. You have to fight your way to the end and fight a boss and slowly move your way through. It's definitely like a gauntlet challenge, and you can warp to get here much earlier, but really this game makes you want to go through and collect as many items as possible so you can be as well prepared as possible for the ending of it. Last but not least on this collection though is Super Mario World. Now this game is probably my first Mario game that I grew up with. I think I played 3 first, but this was my first Mario game, the one that I owned, that was mine, and I got to experience it all for myself for the first time. I didn't have to wait for someone else to pass me the controller because it wasn't my turn, and that is why this game's always going to hold a very special place in my heart. One huge introduction here is, of course, Yoshi. Yoshi being this new rideable character. You can eat shells. Different colored shells give you different abilities, and really just a huge godsend. It's basically a free hit also, which is great. And to the more heartless player, you can actually sacrifice Yoshi to give yourself an extra jump. One thing that also made this game really different are the power-up system. You can actually hold a backup power-up that is up on the top of the screen. You can either switch it out yourself, or if you get hit, it falls down. It's really, really convenient because sometimes you need a cape, but maybe later, and you need a fireballs in the beginning, so it kind of gives you a lot of versatility. Back onto the Yoshis though, there's a whole optional world in the Star World that helps you do all sorts of cool stuff. You can jump around the maps, you can actually go straight to the final boss as early as 10 minutes into the game if you'd like. But another cool thing about this area is they have different colored Yoshis. Now earlier I said that the different shells kind of give you different powers. If you eat a turtle with a blue shell, you get wings. Red shell, when you spit it out, it's fireballs. Yellow shell, it's kind of like an earthquake kind of thing. Well, they actually have different colored Yoshis that you can get in the Star World that line up with these colors, and any shell they eat gives them that power. For instance, and the only one you should use, the blue Yoshi, can eat any shell and basically get wings for the whole level. Well, until you swallow the shell, of course. But you can always grab more shells, and if it's a shell that isn't red, i.e. turning into fireballs, you can always spit the shell out and then eat it back again before you swallow it to keep the flying going. Now this is where the bosses kinda started getting interesting. Let's take this first boss for example. You're on this kind of big teeter-totter seesaw in the lava. Now, you can't hurt the boss himself, but as soon as the seesaw's in his direction, if you jump on him or hit him with fireballs, he starts to slide down. The goal, of course, being to knock him into the lava. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, because when the seesaw comes back, then all of a sudden you're hitting them in the wrong direction. So it's a little bit of timing, a little bit of patience, but it is also a lot better than just jumping on them 3 times. Then you get to the second boss, and I guess I spoke too soon. I don't know what this guy was trying to do, but obviously it didn't work. So I'm not typically trying to show the final bosses on these games, but I really have to show the final boss for this game. He stands out dramatically compared to the others. Up until this point, you haven't faced anything like this before. He throws out these Mecha Koopas, which by the way, you've only just seen in the final castle, and you jump on their head, and you have to launch them up at an angle for them to hit them. This boss has 3 phases, you have to do 2 hits per phase, and in between each phase, Peach jumps out, yells help, and throws you a little mushroom for good luck. Of course, the big scary thing in this one is in phase 3, his happy clown car kinda goes a little bit psychotic on you. The music, of course, very intense the whole time. One of my favorite songs in this game, by the way. And now he's bouncing around quite brutally, also destroying your ammo in the form of the Mecha Koopas, making the whole fight a lot harder. But once you beat him, you get the satisfying end, and it's really quite a cool boss fight. So there's no denying the importance of the Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World collection for the Super Nintendo. It kind of shows that you can not only remake an entire series of a game, but also keep it all on one console, really giving the buyer everything they need for the most up-to-date version of the game. You know, it's kind of funny, a lot of people don't even know that Mario All-Stars plus Mario World is a thing. I mean, everyone knows about Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, but the fact they put it all together in one was kind of a really, really big deal as far as for customer value, something that Nintendo kind of shies away from here and there. But now we're going to talk about when they went outside of their comfort zone, went into the new world, and started talking about 3D. Now, the Mario 3D All-Stars collection has basically the first big 3 3D games. Now let's see how this thing stacks up. So this game quite possibly may have the fastest startup screen I have seen in a modern game. You basically press A and you get right into it. The main menu is very kind of basic. You get all 3 games, and you also get the 3 soundtracks. Now the soundtracks are kind of cool because you can play all the music from the games, which is a really nice addition. And also you can play them and turn off the screen and just kind of jam out if you have your Switch in your backpack or something and have some extra long headphones. The one downside though is, and this is only because this is a modern game, you'd think they'd have some kind of like cool history section or art or anything. I mean, take the Mega Man collections for instance. They have huge art galleries, and the Sonic collections always have commercials and things built in. You'd think for the 35th anniversary they'd maybe have put a little bit more in here. But oh man, you got Mario 64. I'm telling you, like, this is one of my absolute favorite games of all time, and I love the beginning here. It brings back such memories, just messing with Mario's stupid face and making it stretch out all crazy. Mario 64 set the standard for 3D platformers from here on out. I mean, they were the first ones to really do it right, and they might have really been the first ones to legitimately call themselves a 3D platformer. The cool thing about this game is it's set up to where you go into a certain level and there's 6 stars to get, with a 7th secret one for collecting 100 coins. But basically you have little missions to do that fully explore each map. This game is not without its downfalls though. 1 star for every map is fighting a boss, and the same formula, the Mario formula, does apply here, 3 hits, but this being their first take into 3D, the bosses are pretty weak. Usually it's just do one very simple task 3 times, get behind the enemy, jump on the enemy. It's nothing really challenging. I will say, however, that Bowser does tend to be a standout. It's the same concept, get behind him and grab him, but in this one you actually grab him, spin him around, and throw him at a bomb. And then of course further in the game you have to do it more, and also he gets newer abilities. So it kind of builds on itself, but still, overall the bosses are pretty weak. Then again, this is the first 3D Mario game there ever was, so, well, there's definitely some room to grow. There is, however, one thing that this Mario game has that no game could touch at the time. And that's shellboarding, my dudes. I swear, I used to go around just seeing how much I could do on the shell. I would ignore all objectives. I'd maybe make my own objective, like how many enemies could I kill, or like how many coins could I collect without losing the shell. And to me, this was like the precursor to the Tony Hawk games. This game too has power-ups in the form of hats that you find in the overworld, which is the castle. There's a flying hat, a metal hat, and an invisible hat, and some stages you can combine the metal and invisible hat to do certain puzzles. But still, it's kind of bare bones, but then again, this was the first 3D Mario, so everything in this game is basically landmark. In stark contrast, however, to the awesome desert stages from Mario 3, you have maybe the most boring, terrible desert stage of a game I have ever played. What the f*** am I doing? Actually, to be honest, the only redeeming quality of this desert stage is there's a shell, so you can go shellboarding, once again, kind of giving some enjoyment. But I have never liked this level, and it's just kind of like a sour footnote to me on like an otherwise perfect game. Now, however, we get into some unfamiliar territory for me. I did not have a GameCube or a Wii when they initially came out, so the next 2 games are semi-new to me. I have played them before, but I have not beaten them. That is, however, going to change with this. But I will say that in this version of them, man, they look beautiful. Some things to note with Mario Sunshine is that you don't have the analog controls that the GameCube provides. It's kind of weird that they don't give you the option to hook up a GameCube controller, since you can play with a GameCube controller on the Switch. That will forever baffle me, but to circumvent this, they basically made it to where the Z shoulder button and the Z trigger button act as the 2 different functions. One of them lets you shoot while running, and one of them lets you stand still and aim and shoot. Another really weird thing with this collection is you cannot change the inverted look. If you have played the GameCube version, like most have, The trigger is inverted in third person, which really kind of feels natural. In this game, it's not, and there's no way to change that. However, you can go into the Switch's main menu from a console menu and invert the stick like manually, but who wants to do that for one game? This is a very confusing thing for this collection. You know, the more I play it, the more it's like they left out or just kind of rushed it. I mean, definitely grateful they're all here, all these games, but it seems like they really didn't try to do anything cool or add any features. One thing you will notice in all of these 3D games is there's way more narrative here. Now, you know, there's not a sour story in the Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World collection, but all those games kind of have the same story. The princess has been captured, go chase down Bowser, beat him up, or his kids, and save her. And these games are all a little different. I mean, the first game, the princess is captured by Bowser, but you know, you're going through this cool hub world, so it's pretty similar. But in this game, you're going through collecting these shine sprites because this weird paint version of Mario has dirtied up Delfino Island, and the only way to save the island is to get these shine sprites and clean everything up. It's kind of cool, kind of different, because it starts out where, you know, it's not just Bowser taking the princess, it's a whole new threat on an island that you've never been to, and it's a whole new concept. Your main weapon of choice, of course, is the Flood. It's this cool robot that shoots water on your back, water backpack type situation. It's crazy. You can fly with it, you can shoot water to clean up all of the muck and the paint from the bad guys, and it's really a cool new way to get around. I love how, besides the jump dive, which was introduced in Super Mario 64, you now have this hover to really, like, sustain yourself and really make the platforming even crazier. Now, this is the game to me where the bosses in the Mario franchise really started kind of doing something cool, like really cool. I mean, everything else has been a pattern of 3, you know, you get one trick in, but you know, take this first boss for instance. You have to fight off all these other little enemies that are bothering you while basically feeding this piranha plant water to make it fall over, and then you smash it. It's like a 5-step thing. It's not just stand behind the enemy and hit it once. It's like a whole big concept, a whole big puzzle, and then as the phases go on, the boss gets more attacks, basically making it cooler and cooler. Every boss in the game is like this, and I mean, they only get more complex. I love playing these games in order, especially with something as large as this collection being like console generation gaps, because you can really see the concepts evolve. You know, you play Mario Sunshine, and it's like, man, I bet you a lot of these ideas were stuff they wanted to do in 64, they just couldn't because they were limited by what they had. Granted, there's the new gimmick of the Flood that gives them all sorts of new options, but it's fantastic to just see these games evolve, especially so rapidly through this collection. Last but not least on the list of games that I did not get to complete in my youth is Super Mario Galaxy. Now this game probably looks the most beautiful out of all of them. I mean, I know all these games are basically just emulated with a little bit of HD textures, but this looks like it could almost be a Switch game. Cool thing about this game is originally it was on the Wii and it used a lot of the Wii controls. You use basically the motion controls to point out to these star bits and collect them. In this game you can do that same thing using the Joy-Cons. If you're playing in handheld mode, you can use the touchscreen itself to tap on them, or if you're like me playing with a Pro Controller, you actually use the kind of axis part of the Pro Controller to aim at your own TV, and it works the same way as you would with the nunchuck on the Wii. Cool thing is every time your cursor maybe drifts or something, or you know you kind of need to recalibrate it, all you have to do is press the R button, bam, you're sitting right back in the center of the screen, making it very easy to use. One other way they made this game much more accessible without waggle controls is the spin attack was always used by waggling your nunchuck on the Wii. Now, you can do that if you want to with the Joy-Cons, or you can just press X or Y. Much easier, and it actually kind of gives me hope for maybe a non-waggle control version of Skyward Sword in the future. I think you could probably map it out somehow, similar to how they did with this game. The game itself is fantastic. You basically work on these little kind of round planetoids, because they're not really planets, but you go around and it gets a little disorienting at first, but you kind of crawl around them and go little planetoid to planetoid, making your way through the levels. And just like Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, each level has its own tasks, giving you reason to revisit them. And as you do more tasks, you basically unlock more of the level. Also making a prominent return are power-ups. Just like in Mario 3 and Super Mario World, the power-ups are like a full suit, like a full transformation for you. A great example here is this bee suit. You can fly around, you can stick to honey and walk on walls with it, but like a real bee, if you touch water or get hit, you lose your power-up. So it's kind of cool. I'm glad they brought that back, and it really makes the versatility fantastic in this game. I will say that so far, out of all the games, this game has the best boss fights. So let's take this first boss, for instance. Side note, I feel terrible for this thing. This thing was just minding its own business, like living in an egg. You smash it, kind of disrupting, half-hatching it. Then you hit its tail into it, finishing hatching it. So now this thing is alive for the first time ever. And what do? You just proceed to kill it. Like, yeah, you're dead now. The boss fight itself is cool, though. I mean, besides the horrible atrocity you're committing, you hit its tail, and then the tail flies up and hits the boss itself. And it's neat because you kind of learned how to do this earlier in the level by whacking these little plants that look very similar to hit a piranha plant to progress in the level. It's kind of cool in that way. And it's definitely graphically gorgeous, and I love how you kind of fight it on the planets that have the gravity effects. Definitely my favorite version of bosses so far in all the Marios that I've played today. On the whole, with the Mario 3D All-Stars though, you do get less games, but they feel very substantial. I mean, you only get 3 games, but each world has 6 or more different things you need to do in them. There may be less levels overall, but the variety kind of makes up for that, giving you a really great amount of versatility and different things to do in these games. Like I said, it would be cool if they had added some of the other features that modern collections have, maybe an art book, or, some cool commercials or something. But the fact that at a bare minimum you get these 3 games, especially if you've never played either of these 3 games, it's an incredible value, and it's definitely worth your time. Well, now comes the tricky part. Which one is better, Mario 3D All-Stars or the Super Nintendo version of Mario All-Stars plus Mario World? I'm not gonna lie, I went back and forth a lot on this one, but even though they're both outstanding, phenomenal collections, and I highly recommend obviously playing both, I'm gonna have to go with the Super Mario World and All-Stars collection on Super Nintendo. Mainly because they just did so much more work on this. They rebuilt the games from the ground up, and they really showed that you can really do a lot of stuff to really tweak things and bring things into a next console generation. Granted, the fact that these are emulated and upscaled is nice, but that's where they kind of stopped it. They don't have it to where you can tweak the controls. They don't have it to where you can, nothing was up-resed or HD remade from the ground up. I'm not saying it's lazy, but I'm just saying in comparison, they put way more work into this and it shows. But hey, luckily for you, if you own a Switch and you have the Nintendo Online service, you don't actually have to choose, because every single one of these games is on the online service, both the 16-bit remakes and the originals on the NES Online service. So, with that being said, what do you guys think? Out of these 2, which collection do you think is the best as far as something old, something new? Hey guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, because we're going to keep something old, something new going, and also we do all sorts of other videos on the channel, at least twice weekly. Leave a thumbs up or thumbs down, comment down below on which game you think is better, and hey, as always, take it easy.